I have a list of 10 obscure tips for Monster Hunter Wilds that I don't see most players really ever talking about. From things like how to predict the weather, how to get better trading rates, and how to fire Slinger ammo without putting your weapon away, there's probably something here for you to learn, so let's get into it. So this one kinda blew my mind because it can be a huge tool in fights, especially for weapons that take longer to put away. You can actually fire Slinger ammo with your weapon out. On controller, while you're holding down the left trigger, you can click your left stick in and it'll fire your currently selected Slinger ammo in the direction that you're aiming. This is amazing for a few reasons. For example, you can sneak in a flash pod before a monster tries to fly away to a new area. You can also use this to quickly react to monster attacks and interrupt them in moments where you normally wouldn't have had time to put your weapon away before firing the Slinger. This can be huge and create openings against monsters like Uduna and Jin Dahad. Uduna does his big belly flop attack, where it leaps into the air like a whale in slow motion before slamming down. If you use a flash pod before it lands, it'll stop the animation and fall to the ground, leaving it in a vulnerable state and wide open for damage. Likewise with Jin Dahad, you can flash it whenever it does the attack where it runs on a wall before charging back down at high speed. If you flash while it's on the wall, it'll fall down and topple over, which gives you a nice damage window. This is also great for utilizing the heavy Slinger ammo that drops from tempered monsters. These can rack up a lot of damage or even cause a stun to happen, so keep it in mind and make sure to have the Slinger ammo that you want equipped in advance. And now for another amazing quality of life shortcut. If you press the left bumper and right trigger at the same time, your character will put on your selected mantle even if your weapon is out. This is a huge benefit, especially if you're trying to save yourself with something like the mending mantle. For slower weapons, it takes time to put them away and then to put the mantle on after that. This shortcut is great and can save you a lot of time. You can also use this to remove a mantle, which is nice since mantles don't recharge while you're still wearing it, even if the effect has expired. Keep in mind that if your hunts are lasting long enough that you want multiple mantle uses, there is an armor skill called Tool Specialist, which lowers the cooldown by up to 50% for mantles. But honestly, depending on the reason for using it, there are better skills to use for defensive value. And now I want to talk about the environment overview. Once you hit endgame, you'll start to experience the weather changing regularly, and while this might feel random, you can actually easily predict what weather cycles are going to happen, among many other things. If you check the forecast tab of the environment overview in your map, you can actually see how much time is left in the day, how long each time of day will last, and when the weather will change as well as what it's going to change to. The forecast page is also nice because it shows when your environment events happen, like various upsurges, outbreaks, and when you can expect certain monsters to appear. Next is a tip that follows up nicely, and it's about how to use the rest feature. You can actually change the weather and time of day whenever you want. Just head to any camp and head to the barbecue menu tab. I'm not sure why it's here, but once you click on it, the game will let you change to whatever weather you want and set it to either morning, daytime, evening, or nighttime. Just keep in mind that this actually costs 300 guild points to do, which isn't a lot but can add up, especially if you're spamming it constantly. A lot of people are probably doing this now to reset the traders if you're looking for a specific item, so just keep this in mind. This is also useful because certain endemic life or gathering points will only appear during certain conditions that can depend on either of these choices. This next tip is focused on the Flayer skill and really about how you should think twice before using it. It does two things according to its description. The first effect is that it increases how often you inflict wounds on a monster. The second part says, also deals slightly more non-elemental damage. Both of these things, like many skill tooltips in Wilds, can be a little confusing to understand. In the case of Flayer, the community has been looking heavily into this skill, and there have been a lot of misconceptions and confusion around it. While I plan on making a longer video about this, I want to address it briefly here too. The reason why I'm bringing this one up in particular is because it's an easy skill to get excited about on paper. Wounds are incredibly powerful in this game, so a skill that gives you more should be amazing, right? The reality is more complicated. What you need to understand is that Flayer is designed to give you more wounds, and that is working as intended. However, there are nuances to how effective it is in practice. I'll link to the Reddit post in the description that contains a lot of the most updated findings on the skill, but the main things to know are that 1. Flayer's wound damage works similarly to Part Breaker and scales differently depending on the weapon and attack being used. 2. Some weapon attacks entirely do not work with the Flayer skill, and I'll put those on the screen now. Others do work, but the impact is so small that it's probably not worth using anyway. 3. The bonus damage part of Flayer works like a status that you apply, and can only proc on an unwounded area. This build-up scales with raw and crit modifiers, but not elemental damage. Because monsters have a limit on how many wounds can appear, this limits how many times in a hunt that this can proc. In multiplayer, this especially means that you might miss out on procs because other players are forming wounds before you get the chance to hit an unwounded part. Further testing is ongoing, but I suggest getting a feel for it yourself and testing out builds with your weapon of choice to decide on how much you'd like to invest in the skill. If your weapon relies heavily on a skill that just doesn't work with Flayer, or you play mostly in multiplayer, it might not be worth it at all. This next tip is yet another reason to do all of your side quests, especially the ones that involve hunting things. There are two features that I couldn't figure out how to get as I was going through the story that I didn't realize were locked behind the side quests. One was multi-monster investigations and the other were gathering boost quests. Multi-monster investigations are exactly what they sound like. You fight 2 monsters in one hunt and you get way more rewards than a single monster hunt, so they can be incredibly lucrative. These will not appear for you unless you've done the optional quest in that region that has you fighting a tempered monster alongside another monster. All of these quests will unlock naturally as you progress through the story in high rank. You have to unlock this on a per region basis. Once you've unlocked them in all regions, you will additionally unlock the gathering boost quests. These hunts will randomly appear in your environment overview and will grant you 3 days of favorable trading in that region, as well as better gathering from the material gatherers in that region. Just keep in mind that this boost does not apply to you. And now that we're halfway through, I just wanted to give a quick shout out to my Discord. Whether you want to show off some outfits that you're working on, get some build advice, or just find other hunters to play with, it's a great place to be, and I'd love to have you. Anyway, let's get on with the video. For this next tip, I want to talk about event quests. So far, Capcom has been changing these weekly, and they often get fun or useful rewards, so it's good to keep an eye on these. In previous games, they were often good for special layered armor options, as well as sometimes giving you the opportunity to farm special items that can be harder to get otherwise, like crafting ingredients and decorations. Wilds has continued this trend. So far, we've had a quest for farming kunafa cheese, one for a cosmetic hat, and one for armor sphere farming. While these won't always be better, depending on how fast you can farm things in the endgame, they are valid options, especially for players who are still learning the game. It's worth noting that you can check the schedule for these on the Monster Hunter Wilds website, but if you're in the game, you can talk to the support palico in any base camp and it'll tell you what the current event quests are, as well as when they are going to end. You can find this information in the latest news menu. Don't worry too much if you miss one, because these usually come back around. Now let's talk about hunter symbols. As you get into the later stages of high rank and unlock the highest tiers of weapons, you'll start to notice that many of them require a crafting material called hunter symbols. There are 3 kinds, hunter symbols 1, 2, and 3. Getting these isn't complicated, but can be tricky in the case of hunter symbol 3s. All of these come from tempered monster fights. Hunter symbol 1s from 5-star tempered investigations, hunter symbol 2s come from 6-star tempered investigations, and hunter symbol 3s come from 7 or 8-star tempered investigations. Now this next tip is really important. Monster Hunter has a lot of detail and ways to approach the combat. If you've ever hit a monster enough in the same spot, you may have noticed that parts can break. When this happens, the game will actually alert you of this. This part breaking system not only works for getting specific mats, like breaking a claw to get a claw part, but can also have direct benefits in combat. While I don't have an exhaustive list of every single interaction, I'll explain a few just so you can have an idea about how creative you can get with it. One of the most iconic examples would be to break the wings of any flying wyverns. Doing this can often cause them to limp or even fall out of the sky when they try to fly. This can also decrease the amount of time that they do spend in the air when they try to fly, which can help a lot for shorter range weapons. There are other interactions like using water moss in your Slinger to cool down an Ajarakan, making it more vulnerable to attacks that normally wouldn't work well against its flaming body. Or maybe you cut the tentacles of New Udra to limit the range that it has. You can often find direct explanations of some of these interactions in the Large Monster Field Guide, so use that to your advantage as best you can. And last but definitely not least are the traders. As you progress through high rank, you unlock various traders that will appear in the different region towns. These traders will offer you the chance to exchange the various special items that you can gather for other materials. While I won't talk about literally everything that they can trade, there are some notable things to be aware of. For one, this is one of the main ways to get cooking ingredients. They're also a source of rare gear that you can't get anywhere else. Each region offers you the ability to trade for materials that makes the outfit that many of the NPCs wear in those regions. While most of these won't see any use in high damage output sets, you might find some use in having the gathering focus skills that they offer. Lastly, 2 of the traders can offer super valuable materials such as the gold melding ticket, which you can turn into up to 20 max rarity decorations at the melder. To trade for these rare items, you're going to need either 1 Nightflower pollen or 30 ancient Wyverian coins. You can look up guides on how to farm these if you want, but I just wanted you to be aware of the value hidden behind the trader system. And that's everything. If you enjoyed this, I want to keep making better and better Monster Hunter Wilds videos, and I'd love for you to subscribe and stick around. If you have ideas for stuff that you'd like me to cover, let me know in my Discord or in the comments. In any case, I'll see you in the next video.